Good Friday afternoon, folks. August 14th, time for daily reflection. A friend of mine was scheduled for surgery today. Last night I began my prayers for a successful operation, that God would be with him and his family as they await news, that God would be with the surgical team as they prepare and operate. I repeated those prayers this morning. I haven't heard yet, as I'm writing this reflection and speaking it, what the outcome of the surgery has been. I'm still praying that it all went well. I do know that God was and will be with him during surgery, recovery, and restoration. I know that there are many others who are praying for him as well. I also know that the surgical team washed their hands very carefully before performing the surgery. It's part of their tradition. See, it's all those prayers and that hand washing that are our efforts to clean at the moment. All those of us who were praying wanted a clean operation. The surgical team didn't want anything unclean in the operating room, nor near my friend, their patient. And I suppose those are really important traditions that we keep. Praying and washing. Those traditions that I also believe Jesus would say are spot on. Keep doing it. Because we know that infections get into bodies and cause us to be unclean, sick. But when you pick up from where I left off yesterday, the assumption that our uncleanliness comes from what we put into our bodies is exactly what Jesus is challenging. And I'm certainly aware that what comes out of my mouth is frequently more unclean than what my hands are like when I'm eating. Earlier today, I was getting angry at a driver who cut me off, who never signaled a turn, who almost caused an accident. Now, my thoughts, for sure, were of an unclean nature, so according to Sermon on the Mount, I was unclean. They had nothing to do with my hands and whether I'd washed them recently or not. Now, Matthew follows up that episode of Jesus talking about cleanliness and what is unclean coming from us with a story. It's an important one. See, as Matthew tells us, Jesus leaves that place of the encounter with the disciples talking about cleanliness and uncleanliness, and he has an encounter with a woman. Now, there's a flag, first of all. It's a woman, but not just a woman, a Canaanite woman. Now, Canaanites were the earliest inhabitants of the area. They also represent long-hardened pagan and longtime enemies of the Jewish faith. The fact that Jesus met a Canaanite is daring, but a Canaanite woman, double defiling, unclean to the nth degree. See, the strict behavior codes of his day would certainly not have allowed women and men to socialize in that manner, especially not alone, so to speak. The brazen approach of the woman makes her character questionable. What woman would come to a man to start this conversation? Then again, she was an unescorted Canaanite woman with a daughter who was suffering from possession by a demon. Now, all diseases were seen as the result of some past sin, and demon possession was especially seen as a sinful behavior of the past. What must this woman have done to have caused her daughter to be so afflicted? Everyone around could easily have seen this woman as someone who was unworthy of contact with Jesus. She was beyond unclean. And tradition would have said, Jesus, walk away. No, run away from this woman. Yet Jesus shows us what it means to live as someone in touch with a law higher than the laws, traditions, and conventions of human society of the day. He not only talks with her, he accepts her pushing back at his words. Read that section in Matthew chapter 15. Hear what she says, and hear what Jesus responds with. He accepts that pushback. Not only does he just accept it, he says that she has great faith. And at that point, her daughter is cured. Now that would have been just unacceptable to those who lived within the traditions of the day, who had made those traditions their God. I think we face the same challenge today. There are those that society has listed for us as unworthy. They have certainly committed some sin that makes them just plain unredeemable. I believe we're in the midst of a conversation similar to Jesus, the disciples, and the Canaanite woman. We have met those unworthy ones. But have we dialogued with them the way Jesus dialogues? Have we listened as they push back on our traditional assumptions? I'm not sure we have. Remember that in this story, Jesus' disciples want him to send her away because she keeps shouting after us. She's making life difficult for them. We also say, send them away because they keep making life difficult for us. You know who they are. They are the ones who ask us to look at our words, our traditions, and our adherence to a single-minded way of life, which is not what the ones who are shouting after us have experienced. Jesus hears this woman's counter-argument, and he says that her faith is strong. You wouldn't expect that of somebody who is a pagan and an enemy of the Jewish monotheistic lifestyle, but he does. So I'm asking, are we listening to the argument, the counter-argument about our traditions? Can we be open to hearing something new? Can we acknowledge that our traditions are not as pure as we think they are? Back in the 70s, I interned at St. Paul Lutheran Church in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Joan and I had an apartment in a complex. Pretty normal, I think, for most interns in the day. Next to us, or in the apartment next to us, was this huge Confederate flag that hung in the big living room window. We saw it every time we pulled into the parking lot and parked, because that's the side of the building where their window was, ours next door. I remember feeling as I pulled in the second, third, and fourth day a little bit uncomfortable. I mean, I wasn't sure, I didn't understand the complexity, if you will, of what that all meant. And a couple of months went by, and we'd seen the neighbors, or I had at least seen the neighbors in passing in the hallway. Sometimes we actually had a conversation going down the stairs. One day I screwed up my courage and I asked, "Why do you have that flag flying in your window?" And the answer was, "It's a symbol of our heritage." We chatted about it for a little while, and I still didn't know what to think. So then I asked a long-term member of St. Paul's, 70 years old, grew up, born and raised in Baton Rouge, as he said, proudly Southerner. I asked, what's the history and heritage that this flag represents? I remember this long pause. And then he said, well, there's two responses that I should offer. Number one is that apparently they like to remember the fact that they are traitors and losers. Because after all, it was the South who left the Union and then lost the war. And I said, and what's the other one? Hoping that would be something a little bit more pleasant to hear. It really wasn't. He offered that it's also a message that there were some white people who had lots of power. And there were lots of white people and all black people who had no power. And it's a statement about wanting power over others. Wow, I remember thinking. From somebody who grew up in this environment, who lived this life. Today, I'd call it systemic racism. I'm not sure those were words we ever used back in the 70s, but that's what it is for me today. It's our tradition that we deal with that. And many of us are uncomfortable with it. And many of us are seemingly unwilling to even discuss it or to hear anything negative about our tradition and our culture and our story. Talking with a Canaanite woman from the other side of the tracks, from all of the wrong places, Jesus tells me to break away from those traditions that are harmful. It's hard. I know it's hard. It's hard to listen to words written. It's hard to listen to words spoken. It's hard. But then Jesus models for us not the easy life, but the hard life. It's the end of the week. I look forward to seeing you on Sunday in worship, to read your scrolling messages after worship. Please remember that if you have students or you are on staff at a school in the area, please, or even if you're out of the area and you're a teacher or a student, have your backpacks ready. I know that some of you are carrying them so far from your bedroom to the living room or the kitchen, or maybe even just across the room in the bedroom. But bring them because we'll have the blessing of the backpacks. We want you all to enter school, Zooming or otherwise, blessed by God. So see you Sunday. And until then, please remember, wash your hands 20 seconds at a time, a couple of times a day. Use lotion afterwards to keep those hands nice and soft. Love one another. That's especially important. Listen to one another. Dialogue with one another. Even the ones that are different from you, dialogue with. Pray for one another. Wear your mask when you go out in public, please. And of course, as Sergeant Esterhaus says, be careful out there. Now, a word of warning about next week. I'll only be in the office one day, Tuesday. Joan and I are celebrating our anniversary, and we should have been in Hawaii if COVID-19 hadn't ruined my plans, and everybody else's apparently. But we are going to take some time away, to go away by ourselves and just enjoy our wonderful friendship. Looking forward to seeing you Sunday and then again next week. Bye-bye.